Hello, everyone. You caught me mid-cleaning out of my office. Sorry about that. I'm glad to have you with us today. This is Real Talk with Martha Novak. I'm Martha Novak, said person, and we're talking about the authentic life. Now, this is the second part of the series. It is the end of our series on vulnerability, because there were a lot of, what do I want to say? There were a lot of factors. When people say, oh, I want to be vulnerable, yes, that would be a wonderful thing to be. They have no idea what they're talking about. And this actually happened to me with a client. I said, your marriage would be happier if you're more vulnerable. Yes, I want to do this. I want to do this. I said, to do that, we have to open up your emotions. And she went, not so fast. So anyway, having listened to this for the last 4 or 5 weeks, I hope you all have a better perspective on all the things that it takes to be vulnerable. Our talk is culminating, I hope today, if not, we'll go over for another day, on how to be authentic and live an authentic life, and in that be happier, because none of us are happy if we are not authentic. It's just the way it bloomin' is. So there we are. So we have to get used to that. There are a lot of challenges out there. I hope you've had a good holiday. I don't know what time of the year you're going to be listening to this, but we've just gotten over our holidays, and the year has turned to 2020. And I holiday for a lot of people. It was interesting. I heard the same litany from everyone who said, well, it wasn't bad, but it was peculiar. And that seems to be the energy. I want to put that on the table because it gives us a lot of comfort to know it's just something going on, and where we all are as a society, a world society. So I hope you made the most of yours. Let's, as we always do, say a prayer to get ourselves on the same page, mainly me, by the way. And this is a live show. I do want to put that on the table before we pray. Our guest call-in number is 347-850-1647. I certainly hope, and never know until I start hearing from you, either on Facebook Live or on Blog Talk Radio. We broadcast over both. Whether you all are actually hearing me. Our speed where I am is very slow. We've got the fastest we possibly can have. It's still too slow. So we have trouble with broadcasts from time to time. Usually, if you go to my website, which is Martha Novak, Novak.com, you can, under radio shows, toggle back and forth. There are 2 switches there. One says Blog Talk Radio. One says Facebook Live. And one or the other usually works. I hope so today. Right now I'm looking at a beautiful scene of snow. My husband and I came back yesterday from being in another location about 2 hours away. And it was snowing to beat the band. And I watched the temperature drop from a good 38 degrees within 40 minutes to, 27 or 28 when we finally arrived. We slid several times. We're in the mountains, so wow, that was pretty scary. But we got home, so that was good, huh? Sometimes when you do this work, you literally are in another zone. And I got real tickled. I woke up in the middle of the night thinking, because it was traumatic, to get home and all that snow and ice. I got home and I went, are we dead or did we make it? I'm not sure which. So there we are. I think I'm alive. Okay, kids, let's do a prayer. I'm going to launch into where we left off last week. Now, we are, I will say, on point number, I think we're on point number 6. I'm number 5. Hang on. Yes, number 5. We're still in point number 5. So I'll go back and repeat a little of that just so we can catch up with where we were, and we'll launch into the new information. I do urge you to go back and listen to the old information that everything rides on, okay? Thank you so much for doing so. All right, let's do a prayer. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, we thank you so much for this opportunity to be together, for opening our minds, our hearts, our very being, the cells of our body to health and vitality, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually in this new year. We ask now that we surrender whatever we can of our ego child's minds, that we may see more, be more aware of the blessings that we do have, and that we ourselves are creating our lives. We ask to be more aware of that this year, that we may create good ones, that we may create deliberately and consciously, so that we may be happy at last. We now open ourselves to be more loving human beings and more loving individuals. We thank you so much for all of this, dear God. We say now that we know nothing, for it is the you through us that knows it all. We are very grateful for that. We say this with all our hearts, and thank you. And say this prayer in your name, and in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening to the show today. Thank you. And thank you, all of you listeners. So it is. All right. So point number 5 that we had started on, and we were right in the middle of when we ended last week's show, was that we have to confront at some point our narcissism. Guys, every human being in the world is a blazing narcissist, some more than others, you know. We're supposed to learn as we get older to confront that. Unfortunately, a lot of people learn to hide it. And there's such a thing as closet narcissism, which means that you pretend you're not, but you still are, okay? The whole point of this is not to hide it, not to cover it up in some socially acceptable way, but to actually confront it. You know, the healthy thing is to have a good sense of self, to know yourself quite well, to take responsibility for yourself, but not to have to diminish yourself or aggrandize yourself in any way. This you cease comparison with others. You are you. You try to be the best you can be in the moment, and that's that. But we come by our narcissism very, oh, hey, Kat. Oh, I was hoping that I would hear from you this morning. Thank you, Kat. And I always count on you to let me know that you hear me out there. So thank you. That's a very sweet thing. I'm awfully glad to hear from you. What I was saying is that we come by our narcissism quite naturally. And pardon me, my nose is running because it's so blooming cold right now. In a warm room, does my nose know it is very cold outside? I don't know, but anyway, it's what it is. It runs. Can't disguise it when the camera's right up on you, huh? Okay. Narcissism starts when we're little kids. All kids are narcissists. Do you understand like that? Because it's all about us relative to our environment, to the other people, to God, if we're trained in that, to our parents, to our siblings, to our friends, to our dogs and cats, we are in relationship with life at that point. It's all about us. Therefore, no matter how no matter how much of a workaholic, say the father is, I'm just making this up, we think that we are to blame, that we are not interesting enough, because it is all self-focused before we are 7 or 8 years old. It's entirely self-focused. Now, if that's so blooming natural, why isn't it all right now? Because that means there has been no growth in this arena, you see? And we've got to grow. I mean, that's the whole point of life. We go from the fear-based, egoic child's mind, and narcissism is fear-based, guys, to the love-based self of the highest self. That's our spiritual journey. That's the journey that we're privileged to walk. That's the journey we talk about here with the radio show. So that said, we do come by our narcissism naturally. However, continuing on that journey past the time we're 7 or 8 years old, we are supposed to learn something about ourselves. And certainly when we get to our adulthood and our brains start maturing, which they don't do until we're in our 20s and beyond, we're supposed to change, grow, learn, reinvent, not more and more and more our authentic selves, who we really are. For that, we need to have a real good sense of our sense of self. Now, I warn you about something that people say as they're doing that, and that is, I've got to say my truth. And the adamancy of that is egoic. The whole point here is that we want to confront and lose the egoic child's mind, because it's the part of us that thinks like a child. It's the part of us that is insecure and that is covering up with our narcissism. So what started out as a wonderful teaching tool, us in relationship to everything, has now become a pathological system. You see, it has for just about everybody, guys. And why don't we all just say it and get tickled at clients sometimes because they'll pretend they're not. They argue with me about this, and it's like, there's no argument. Everybody's a narcissist until they're not. So let's lose it now. Let's grow past it. Let's do the things that we need to do, put in place, and have a much happier life. Because narcissism, no matter what form it takes, whether it is an exhibitionist narcissist, a closet narcissist, or even a toxic narcissist, which is the one that narcissism that's more attached to, say, the antisocial personality disorder. Certainly, those first two forms of narcissism are always metaphorically looking over their shoulder to see who's going to catch them. Maybe the third one too, I don't know. But certainly, they know they are not fully what they seem. Now, the closet narcissist has more awareness and knows what they're doing. The closet narcissist is what do they call it? The imposter syndrome. That's part of the closet narcissism. So we do so want you to catch yourself in this. First part of catching yourself in this is to just admit, yep, that's me. It's all about me. we in our advanced classes, we do teach classes here. I teach people to do what I do in terms of the emotional healing experience, a little bit of physical healing, but primarily the emotional healing experience. It's all energy based. And one of the first things we teach everybody to do is just admit everything. When classes start, when people first start with me, it's real cute because everybody is so shy and their issues are so personal and we couldn't dare talk about them in front of people. Just let me have you for a little while. And now everybody tells everybody. And this is what's so interesting. The classes get so close because nobody's expecting anybody to be perfect. We're just expecting everybody to be real and authentic and tell the truth. That's a hard thing to do, is tell the truth to yourself. I find that very, very difficult with people. And I think in my own journey, that was very difficult for a long time. And I always then go into my philosophical bin and say, even no matter how much growth we have, I think we're all vulnerable to not telling each other the truth. I will say that. But I hope we will all try and reach for that authenticity. Okay, so in our talking about narcissism, I wanted to go a little further with this, because if we can drop the narcissism, drop our fear-based experience and what motivates us in a fear-based way, wow, I think we can have quite the wonderful life. We have to wake up to a few things that I've already mentioned, like the fact that we're creating our lives and how harsh we're being to ourselves. By the way, I've mentioned this before. But until you start your personal journey with somebody like me, or me, or my or the people I've trained, I don't think anybody has any idea that we're being harsh to ourselves, that there are things that we say to ourselves that we miss, that we don't even know we're saying, that seem to go right by us because they're so habitual. And until we can really be more aware and more sensitive to what we're doing in a lot of different aspects, mentally, emotionally, physically, by the way, and spiritually, I don't think we can correct it. So part of this is really waking up. Now, how do you do that? Well, it's not a light switch you throw on. What it is an opening to more, an opening to more, an opening to more information, an awareness, an opening to more. And that's what the conscious journey is, right? And eventually you have it all because you've opened to it. I think I was reared in the Christian tradition, and the whole Judeo-Christian thing is incorrect in that we don't earn God's love. We don't earn these things. These things were programmed into us. We open to them. We don't earn anything by being a good little boy and girl. We open to them by being more aware. Because some of this is just a working of energy, ladies and gentlemen, even the most unaware person can do this and have money or whatever else. But you're not listening to this show to be one of them. You're listening to the show to be aware. Certainly, having it all and being in the beneficence of God is part of that. But the whole point of consciousness, the whole roadmap, if you will, in a general term, is awareness to consciousness to enlightenment. And that's the path that we're on as we do these shows. Now, I think if you did everything on this list that I'm giving you now about being authentic, as a matter of fact, everything that we've talked about since we opened the the series a while back on vulnerability, I think if you did all that, you have a very happy life indeed. However, caveat, you can't turn it on like a light switch. You have to be aware of these things. It's fine to be aware of them generally. That's why I do a broadcast like this. But then it takes work on the self. It just does. Because the way the ego child's mind is designed, and this is the part of us that thinks like a child, is it doesn't want you to know certain things. Because it wants the glory. Again, it's the supreme narcissist in all of us, isn't it? This ego child's mind. It says, you are alive because of me. That's part of the propaganda it sends up to all of us. And your limitations that I have imposed on you, that I have taught you, are the things that make you safe and give you the life that you've got. And while it's not necessarily happy, who cares about happiness? You're alive, you're safe, you're well, you understand your world, therefore you will survive, right? Okay, well that was all fine before you were 8 years old. That's why we call it the ego child's mind. But that's not true now. There's much more to know about this very complicated system called God, called consciousness. It isn't easy. One of the reasons, and I am going to talk to you about this later on in the show, one of the reasons I'm talking to you about this is one of my suits, my strong points, is that I take complicated subjects and reduce it down to size. That's not because you are inadequate in any way mentally. It's because I am. I've got to take some of these subjects and really get them understandable to the point that I can get it and I can live it. One thing I want to put on the table about all this. You can hear it. That's great. You can hear it. You can make little changes in your life. But that's really, really, really different from owning it. Owning it. Now, I want to talk to you about that a minute because several times in my own life, I remember one time, because I don't remember all the times, of course, but I remember one time I was in the middle of teaching something that, so help me God, I'd taught for 20 years or 25 years. And you know what happened? The floor dropped out of my understanding. It actually, I felt like I was standing on the floor. I was teaching, I was doing what a platform, teaching what I always do. And I got it on a whole different level. Now, here's the interesting thing. I don't think I understood anymore. I don't think my brain went, oh, I've never seen that before. I've never seen that before. Isn't that interesting? No, this was the ownership. This was making those things so deliberately and exclusively part of my life that I would never, ever go back. I could not. And the interesting thing is I hear people from time to time will come in my sessions and they'll say, oh my God, I backslid. You can't do that. How can you be unaware of something that you're already aware of? You cannot do that. That isn't possible. What you've reached is another pocket of certain behaviors or feelings that we need to address now. It's the whole thing, our journey to healing, mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually, energetically, is all a gyre. So there's one thing under something else, but you don't go back up. You see? Good. So I'm delighted to do these radio shows for you. I am delighted to talk to you about this. I'm delighted to answer questions when you call in. However, I need for you to know that that's not all there is. There is an ownership that's going to be happening to you throughout your life that are real significant pieces of the puzzle to put it in place so that more can open. It's the most exciting journey you'll ever go on. And in my opinion, it's the new frontier. I don't think science can possibly keep up with man's consciousness right now. There is just more opening in the world energetically than has ever happened before, and it's a very exciting time in our lives. All the more reason to get on the bandwagon and study and start. Well, hello, Elizabeth. I'm so glad that you're with us today. How are you? I hope good. I was just talking about Delightful You the other day because I had asked your mom and dad to come to a little function that I was giving, and I was hoping that you were with them, but they said that there was just too much going on. So there we are. Give them my love. I people sometimes do not, but when I consider everybody my friends, you wouldn't be listening if you weren't compatible with all this, but I do love the people I know for sure. All right, so now let's go into some of this, some of what I'm saying about narcissism. So we've talked about what narcissism is and where it came from. And, I think it's really important not to vilify it because the more uncomfortable, this is the way healing works, emotional healing, more uncomfortable you make yourself, the more you come down on yourself, the more you are going to resist going with. So I think it's a very important part of your process, not only about narcissism, but anything else, that we accept it as part of us and we own it as part of us. And then at some point we see that we have other choices other than that. We become more sensitive to the other people in our environment and our environment itself and the animals in it and the whole thing. I've often said that as you follow this gyre down into deeper and deeper consciousness, one of the interesting things about all of this is that we find everybody else. I know that sounds like a very esoteric and strange statement, but it is true because everybody is struggling with consciousness. They may not call it that. You know, the person you work with at work who is mad at the boss all the time is struggling with consciousness. This is just not on that one level, you see, that we try to make it before we have the language of something else. So, knowing where it came from, knowing that we're all using it, what can we do about it? Well, I've given you the first answer, which is, for God's sake, study consciousness and let's open to more. But in the meanwhile, and this will be much easier in the arena of your excellence, which consciousness is, we want you to start learning something, giving something, sharing something, talking to people, keeping your attention, now this sounds like a contradiction, it is not, on your own experience, because what narcissism does is it compares. And it says, I am better than these people, I am worse than these people, they have more than I do, I have less, they have less, therefore I feel pretty good about me, you know, and it's this game that we play that must be dropped, the comparison game. Well, hello, Daniel. Well, you know what? I hope that you had wonderful holidays as well. I don't know. Thank you. I appreciate it, Daniel. You're a sweetie. Happy New Year to all, by the way. This is my version of it, I guess. You see, as we age, whether we are going through our 20s or 30s or more or beyond, we're supposed to get wiser and wiser and wiser and wiser. And wisdom comes from our learning about ourselves, since consciousness is everything, and it bloomin' is. You know, I want to put on the table that in my belief system, all the dreams that you have, with very rare exception, are all consciousness dreams. Your dreams, if you are remembering them, tell you exactly what you're worried about and what you need to work on and what you shouldn't work on and where you're doing well and where you're not, and the struggle that's going on in you between your higher self and your ego child's mind. And I always, when I am working on people in session, I say, if you remember your dreams, some people do more than others, name them. Because if you can give me a name, like a movie name, The Bear Chasing Me Through the Woods dream, that dream can give me a world of information. I don't need to know what the dream is about. If I have that in your access key, that tells me it's going to come out in a different form in my work, what you're worried about, what there is going on inside of you, what we need to release and what we need to open to. So I do want to say that we are supposed to, as we grow in our maturity, we're supposed to get wiser. Um, One of the things that you have heard me say is doing this work opens us to authenticity. And that's not enough, because the truly authentic person wants to contribute in some way to society, to the larger whole, to families. They want to use what they have just experienced. Thank you. Yeah. Ain't gonna happen, Daniel, but thank you anyway. Anyway, here we go. Um, the contribution that we then make out of this authenticity then becomes the wisdom that we have to give people. It's all this marvelous system. And by the way, the wisdom becomes our contribution as well as we deepen in our growth. Far from being narcissistic, we do this because it's the right thing to do. We focus on the self as the creator of our world. When the nice thing to me about consciousness is we realize when something negative happens, something that we are upset about, let's say we have been criticized, we realize that it isn't just about that. It's not this person being mean to us. It is the universe talking to us and asking us to do something. And what happens? Well, a lot of times we get mad. A lot of times we slink into our cave and avoid it and don't want to look at it. A lot of times we will be sad and melancholy and turn into drama queens. And there are a lot of other things that we can do as well. Why? Why? When if we can just realize the universe is speaking to us, we can then change. Now, change is a very scary word for a lot of people. I don't know why. Okay? But it is. And we simply must get comfortable with that kind of change. Doing something because it's the right thing to do, really the right thing to do, in all honesty with ourselves, not trying to talk ourselves into anything, is certainly the reason the highest self acts. It's the right thing to do. Sometimes these decisions that we make are very, very difficult. There are people all over the world that are making horrible decisions for themselves and their lives and their families and their countries. We have to, as the chaos reigns, and this world is more and more chaotic and will continue to be so, all the more reason for us to know ourselves, work on ourselves now, become more authentic, and know we're acting for the right reasons with all the information we have at the time. You see? That's not selfish. As a matter of fact, I want to say that on the highest level of God, when we are talking about this, when we say something, do something, because we feel in our deepest experience that this is the right thing to do, it is in everyone's best interest. That's the way God works. All ascended truth confirms itself. It's good for all. Now, we have to be loving enough to allow other people to feel whatever they're going to feel. But your intentions are pure and good. And that's how you can make very hard decisions in your life and still go on. they're made in love. The right thing to do decisions are always made in love, even if they're hard decisions. The highest self always creates a win-win situation in life because it isn't all about you. There is a formula, you see, for the highest self, and that is me and you together creating an agreement whereby we agree or disagree, but it's still an agreement, whatever we've got going on there. And that's how you know that you're in the highest self. Now, the ego child's mind, it's all about me, me, me at the expense of you, or it's all about you, you, you at the expense of me, which is still, by the way, all about me, because I've just made myself into the classic victim, and I'm going to use that to the hilt. You see? That's the way it works. Now, this is the fulfilling part that we're talking about. This experience of the journey, this learning in the moment, this seeing reactions and realizing that you created these things, you know, by listening, by not listening, by omission, by commission. We create these things, and we can uncreate them, and we can do something else. What do we do instead? We blame ourselves. We blame ourselves. There's no blame. We're all trying to endure. We're all trying to survive until we're not. When we find out there's a lot more to this living experience that's more fulfilling and joyful. We do it all sorts of different ways. There's nothing wrong with that unless you stay there. And that's not what life is about. We're not going to be happy staying anywhere. We're on a journey. We got to keep moving mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, deepening, learning, growing, being wise and contributing, and being even more wise. Okay. I want you to be aware, as we are narcissists, in running from one extreme to the other. I see this a lot in spiritual work. We stop it in mine, but kids. This is what I mean. Running from one egoic extreme, one egoic child's mind extreme to the other. I don't love myself. Someone will come in and say to me, oh, I don't love myself. Running to the other extreme, I love myself. They're both the same thing, and I'm wanting you to realize that. Because the fact is, you don't know anything about love. Now, I'm not criticizing you. Of course I'm not. I can speak for myself just fine. Until we do, we don't know anything about anything. And I think it's just such a marvelous thing when people come in and say that to me. I was so proud of a client of mine who, when I challenged her to find her value, she said, oh, love. And the next week she came in and she said, you know, I don't know a damn thing about it. So teach me. Now, that's a smart woman. That's a brilliant statement. Let's learn. Okay? You know, I think the further you go in consciousness work, the more you realize you don't know anything, and it's perfectly all right. That's one of the reasons that in the opening prayer I always say, help us know nothing. Let us surrender knowing anything. Because it's the higher self that's in all of us that knows what we're supposed to do next and walks with us on this path and helps us at every opportunity, you see. So, no extremes there. The thing is that we've got to challenge lies to ourselves too. And both of those statements, I don't love myself and I love myself, are both lies. Neither one of them are true. So let's get on the path of truth and find out what that is, you see. I want to put on the table that the spiritual journey is one of surrender. If you all want to read about this in more detail, I urge you to get on my website, marthanovak.com, Novak. There are a lot of ways to spell that last name, I found out. And but I am Novak.com, and there's a book that I've written called The Life You Want. There are only 3 subjects in that whole book. One is consciousness and what it is. One is manifestation and how to do it well, how to create the life you want. And one is spiritual surrender. I want to talk briefly about that. I think I've done another show on that. Probably there'll be another show that will come up at some point to do. But here's where we are. Spiritual surrender happens a lot in life. You may not call it spiritual surrender. I understand. You can call it anything you want. But these are little coming face to face with abject truth of what you're doing. Sometimes coming face to face with abject truth looks like somebody's yelled at us, somebody's criticized us, somebody is hurting us. You may be quite confused by it, particularly if you've been in fantasy about yourself or in the expansive self instead of in the transcendental self. The interesting thing is, I think this is probably a good thing for me to repeat for those of you that are new to me. If you drew a line at the bottom of the page, and on one side of that line, this is a horizontal line, you put the contractive self, and over here on the other side of the line, you put the expansive self. You can label that whole experience, the line and those 2 selves, the egoic child's mind experience. There it is. It's very self-indulgent. We run from one extreme to the other. I just gave you a good extreme. I don't love myself, you say, as you are possibly contractive and realizing, oh my God, and very dramatic, right? And then I love myself. It's the expansive side. You could also mix that up and have it opposite. This is neither a good or a bad side. It's just part of the ego experience. It's a manipulation of self, the ways we think in this experience. Now, if you all would draw a funnel that has no top on it, up from that line, there's something up there, and that's the transcendent self. That's the self that really does have pure intentions. That's the self that really does know who you are. That's the authenticity that you truly are. That's the love-based self. And here's the rub. We often mix up the expansive ego experience with the transcendent experience. And every time we do, let me tell you, if we don't see that we are in that fantasy land of the expansive self, we're going to have a terrible experience to show us just that we have been in the wrong mind. We're going to get slapped down. I'm putting this on the table to say, when that happens, don't use your old devices. Don't ruminate. Don't blame the other person. Don't blame yourself. Don't go into drama city. Don't avoid and not think about it. Don't get angry. Don't look at what you're doing. Resolve to do something different. And if you can't, just get help for it. Even if you can't see it. That's what people like me are supposed to do for you. Is we're supposed to show you what you're doing and give you a choice so that you can do something else. Because again, the ego child's mind doesn't want you to see it. Oh, it says, no, 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 don't do that. Don't see this. No, no, no. Just do what you've always done. And that's why we're all stuck in our patterns, and it's not serving us anymore. And in this world of consciousness, when consciousness is opening, we must get on the bandwagon, because it is already a different world than we've ever had. You want to get on the bandwagon to help lead, to help contribute. You want to get on the bandwagon so that you can keep up and you're not left behind. And you're not stuck in these old patterns of blame and shame and more that have no business in your life now. Okay, moving along. What is true is that we are all on a path of becoming. I love that word. Let's just become. Because nobody's gonna get there in the classic narcissistic way. You're going to have lovely successes along the way, and they're not going to be enough, and you're going to want to do more because that's a contribution. All right? So, we are in the process of becoming. Why don't we accept that and let that be all right? And we've got to have patience and mercy about that, guys. Mercy on ourselves. Let's give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. You've made mistakes. So have I. So has everybody. We make them because we don't know anymore. We're still trying to survive. We are still going into our rote patterns instead of seeing our options, learning something new, being more like ourselves and other people. The work we do here teaches us deeper and deeper and deeper levels of ourselves, and then we find love. There we find it. And we also find compassion for other people, because other people in life, no matter where they are in their journey, and there's no judgment about that, are all trying to survive. You did too. I did too. We do until we don't have to do that anymore. Much more peaceful place. Sometimes, now this is going into, that's all I want to say really about number 5, narcissism. But let's go into number 6. People that are in the egoic child's mind have trouble telling themselves the truth. And this is where surrender comes in, because it's a very helpful thing for all of us just to say we're big fat liars, which is what one of my darling clients said to me. She was so cute. Oh, I just adore this woman. And she came in and she plopped down in the chair opposite my desk and she said, well, I'm just a big fat liar. Because she was having more and more awareness, of course, of what she was saying to herself that just wasn't true. Now, you're going to hear shows on shows, I think, on cognitive distortions that handle this pretty well. I want to listen to those, because cognitive distortions, these things like personalizing, oh, they don't like me. That's a personalization, right? Oh, they're that way because I've offended them. I've done something wrong, or my husband has, right? That's silly. If you've got a problem with someone, the honest, pure thing to do is go and say, I'm noticing that you're distracted today. Or at me, and they'll say, no, all right? Or if they do say yes, then say, what is it? So I can, do something different. We can talk about it. You see? These are the surrenders that I am talking about. Instead of pulling yourself back together and being larger than life and by God handling that, and or blaming yourself and being the bottom of a dirty birdcage, both are motivated by the same insecurity and the same fear. It's much better to own it all and say, well, it was a mistake. I think I mentioned this to you on the phone. I found in a book on mistakes that for every, I think the going opinion is for every 10 decisions you make, 3 or 4 of them are going to be mistakes. Why? Because we don't have enough information. We're working from our old patterns. A lot of reasons. Okay? So why isn't that all right? The bottom line here with everything in God's universe Unfortunately, we see this as we're dying most of the time instead of earlier in our life where it can do us some good, is why isn't everything all right? If somebody hurts your feelings, I'm so sorry, mine have been hurt too. It's not going to kill you. You can work it out with them if they're important enough, and you can learn something from it and go on and not do that again in the future if you don't want to apologize. But why isn't everything all right? You're going to find on your spiritual journey at one point that it most certainly is. And that's where the peace is for all of us, Okay. But we've told ourselves lies all our lives. We just have. It helps us to hang on to whatever semblance, by the way, of our sense of self we have when we're little. It helps us feel a little more powerful when we don't feel powerful at all. We tell ourselves lies. At one point in our spiritual journey, they just simply must be confronted. And more important than confronting the lies is then finding the truth. You see, if we say, I don't know what love is. I keep going back to that one. Or no, I'm sorry, I don't love myself, or I love myself. Both of those are not truths. So what's the truth in the middle? The truth is I'm trying to learn, I'm becoming, I'm in the process. I need more awareness about this. I need to make better decisions for myself. I am in this moment wanting to be real. I will strive in the next moment to try to be real. There you go. So these truths that confront the lies are not in the extremes, are not the opposite. They're somewhere in the middle. Honest, true, resonant with your deepest and most authentic being. Now, I was going to tell you something that I haven't talked about before too much. I think this would be an interesting thing to say. Our lies that we tell ourselves are based on the appearances that we observed in our childhood. You see, we don't have a developed mind, and everything is about us. So everything becomes, I'm not good enough, or I'm always wrong, or something like that, right? It explains your world. It serves its purpose very importantly. You should not vilify this part of you. It kept you living and understanding your world. And you know what? Any child that doesn't understand their world is going to have a hard time surviving. So the ego child's mind, creates a story. Problem is when we are adults and we're still living that story. The story's got to go. It was there, served its purpose until you were 7 or 8 years old. There's a secondary patterning where you're waking up a little bit and seeing you're not the only person in the world until about 12 years old. But you really can't start, you live your life, you're following these patterns, it keeps you reasonably safe in your mind. And then you start waking up in later years when your brain has developed more, when you observe people that are more emotionally mature, when you start this journey, if you're lucky enough to do so. I'm going to go off the subject for just a minute. This is what I was going to tell you, but it's not really off the subject at all. I see a lot of young women all want babies. And I'm all for having children, don't get me wrong, but you've got to be very realistic about what a good parent, and I say this to you men too, what a good parent is. You will be doing what I'm about to say with every single child if you're a good parent. And that is, you will be framing every moment of their existence that you're aware of in a higher and love-centered way. Dear God in heaven, that's a lot of work. One of my clients has the most lovely boy. He's just great. And I think she would have loved a dozen of them at one point in her career. But she sees what she has to do. She is an extremely good mother. And I have another woman who has 4 children in my clientele. And she struggles because she doesn't have the time and the energy to do that. You are letting these children surmise what they are surmising, and it's being put into a story. Now, you can't a story. You wouldn't want to stop them. It's part of our survivals at that age, and for a good many years afterwards. It's part of our survival. However, it really is wonderful parenting to help correct and let the child see more, you see. Your parents did not do that for you, and neither did mine. And I want to say that really this is all of our journeys to find out who the heck we really are and what our authenticity is. And our parents are not going to be able to know that. But they can open the door to our becoming by saying, well, you could see it like that, Fred. But here's something else that could be going on, darling. So I want to put that on the table. It's very helpful to frame for the child. It's even more helpful if you model that framing for the child in your own life. It takes a lot of energy. So any of you all that have not had children yet but think you want them and you want a dozen, I'd rather you raise a really good one or a good 2 or 3 and be extremely aware of that and help them on their way in a very conscious manner. Full-time job. The ego child's mind also does something. I want to go back to our text now, and that is they generalize. Do you know what I mean by that? And so they make a mistake. So you make a mistake. Let's say you get a D on your geography exam. All right. Well, if you then take that one, that's one event. That's one event. And if there's a second event, you tend to say, you generalize and say, I can't do anything right. I don't know anything about geography. Oh my God, I'm so stupid. And now you've got a generalization. Generalization, when you say it with repetition to yourself, which we all do, becomes your life. That's how we get in real trouble. Then we didn't just do a stupid thing. We're stupid. And it is the am, was, we're, I am, that's the problem here. Okay? You are condemning your intelligence. And do you think anybody's going to be happy condemning their intelligence? I can tell you now, no. We have all made mistakes in our lives. We've all done something wrong. Okay. Now, why don't we let that be one event, 2 events, 3 events? And if we vilify ourselves, and if we so persecute ourselves like this, you're not going to learn anything. You're just going to keep the persecution up, right? The whole point is to go, what happened here? So I can clearly see this, and then I won't have to do that again. But if you are condemning yourself, you're not learning anything. You're going to death row, so what's the point, right? And you put yourself there. So please don't do that. Don't generalize like this. Some other examples of generalization, in addition to I can't do anything right, I'm always wrong, I never get what I want, I have to speak my truth. That's the egoic presentment, right? You don't have a truth, by the way, except in the ego. There's only God's truth with the highest self. So come on. Who says that? Which mind is saying, I have to speak my truth? Come on. I'm abandoned, you might say. Nobody loves me. Well, if you feel like nobody loves you, I'd work hard on love. I don't know why that went off. I'm sorry. Facebook gave me a notification saying that finish or resume. I resumed. Okay. Now, I am put in mind of a really funny bit that Bob Newhart did. Funny that a friend of mine sent it to me, and he had the same name as this Bob Newhart character. It was very cute. Bob Newhart, I think this was when he was very young and before he played that adorable psychiatrist on his Bob Newhart show. He had a funny bit. The woman comes to him, and I can't remember what's wrong with her. She's afraid of the dark, or she's afraid of fish, or something pretty silly as an issue, right? And he listens to her, and he has one or two questions. The psychiatrist that he's playing, Dr. Switzer was the name, by the way. If you want to find it on YouTube, I'm sure it's on there. And he listens and he listens. This is rather a long bit, right? And finally, he says, well, I do think I can fix your problem. And at the top of his voice, he yells, "Stop it!" It's hilarious. Stop it! I say this to you. If you're saying these awful things to yourself, if you have pathologically crossed the line from the I did this one time or two times or three times into I am, I think it's very important for you to realize what you're saying to yourself and stop it. Certainly therapy of some sort, like consciousness training, can help you. We will not let you get away with a moment of that, or with a moment of any kind of generalization, or with a moment of drama, by the way. The client that is finished with her session and then I'm walking to the door to say goodbye to, who says to me something like, when I haven't slept, I know I'm dying, is going to come right back into my office. That is not acceptable, right? Thank you. Now, all of us have to be kicked in the pants once in a while, guys. It's just the truth. That happened for me. Now I'm a kicker. Still get kicked in the pants from time to time. And those of you that are out there that want a relationship, man, a relationship will kick you in the pants more than anything. You can be mad about it. You can argue with your spouse, and you could be grateful for it because this is what you wanted. It's part of your growth and learning. Correct what you need to do and go on. I always use the silly example of, if we look in the mirror and we see our hair is all weird, as it is for me sometimes, what do? Well, if you are mature in this aspect, you're going to grab your comb and your brush and you're going to fix it the best way you can, right? But if this were a mirror of life, and you looked in it and you saw that things were not right in that mirror, as society does reflect that to us, what would you do? Stand there and blame the mirror? shame yourself, none of this is going to get your hair fixed. Avoid it by not looking at the mirror, being angry and yelling at it. None of this is going to fix the problem. Everything in life reflects us. And here's the good news. It'll continue to reflect the good, just like from time to time it reflects what we need fixed. Isn't that nice? Life gets better and better, more joyful, more loving. There's more opportunity to communicate and share and to get it all back and to give it all away again. Okay. I want to say that if I am talking to someone who deals with depression from time to time, moderate or severe, I can honestly say to you, you're saying some of these things to yourself. And I would be depressed too. I want to say that this is a fixable thing, but you're going to have to challenge yourself and change and listen and become more aware of what you're saying and learn how to love and nurture yourself and be different. It's just the way it is. The problem with depression is you don't have any energy, right? You just don't have any energy. I've been depressed in my time years ago. And you say, oh, I just can't do this too. Well, that's an ego statement if I've ever heard one, right from the ego child's mind. Any excuse will do. Say anything. The fact is that in any kind of change, my dears, you have to expend energy to bring that change forth. Change requires energy. You've got it in reserve. You're just not using it. And you are doing the very things that lay you low, bring you down, and make you feel bad. You've got to find out what those things are. Okay. Consciousness studies, certainly what we do here, goes about stopping that. You must be called on every negative statement because sometimes these things are so habitual, you don't realize that you're even doing it, you know? And don't mistake my adamancy as I talk to you here, I don't even know what to say. I guess it's just me sometimes being adamant because I know you could have a better life, but it's not judgment. You see, when you carry a lot of self-judgment, you interpret what I'm doing here as judgment. And that's important to get on the table because at no point am I judging you. I'm just adamant about an enthusiastic life that you could have, and enthusiastic about the life you could have. I have had in my career a client who was a thief, and he felt very bad about being a thief and a cheater, and I thought he was very dear. And we had to get this on the table right away, that I was not going to judge him for that. He was going to do it as long as he needed to, and then he wouldn't do it anymore. So we went to work. So I cannot tell you more sincerely that I am not judging anything. But my job, kids, is to push and to cajole and to, forgive the analogy here, I'm not saying that you're an animal, but poke the gorilla, you know that phrase, because I've got to see what you're doing. And I don't live with you. I have you for 2 hours in a session. That's it. That's all I get to see. I appreciate the honesty that you have when you come in. There are a lot of people that I work with that are not honest. I spend several years breaking down their dishonesty about telling the truth, breaking down this image that they come in with, instead of just the reality of them. That's where we can really make some progress, right? So my job is to provoke you sometimes, especially in session, so I can see what you do with that. So I can see if you go into blame, or if you'd like to avoid, or you get enraged, or any of the old patterns that we always do. Don't misinterpret what I do here, because I sometimes do it here as judgment. We are on the way to becoming, and we are the way we are until we're something else. And I'll say again, why isn't that all right? Okay, number 7. You must be willing to grow to have the authentic life. That's a really big one. You've got to put in effort to do this well. When I first started lecturing, and my husband heard me. My husband is an engineer, of course. And he heard me talk about the physics of change and the physics of the body. He said, you better tell people that to go from the way they are into a new way of being, it takes a lot of energy. It does. Change requires energy. And you're not going to have more tomorrow than you have today, unless you have the flu, God forbid. I hope you don't. That's an excuse. We have got to wake up right now. No excuse will do to do anything else. That doesn't mean that there's a judgment on excuses. Use them as long as you need to. But I need for you to know the truth, which is no excuse will do. And as long as we're in agreement about that, we've got a win-win situation, don't we? Okay. Any kind of change requires energy. It's happening all over the cosmos. Stars explode, right? It's happening when a chick hatches from the egg. Have you ever thought how much effort that takes? How much pain they might be in to do that? How frustrating it could be for them? Or is it just something you think that happens? I think you're diminishing the contribution of everybody if you think it's just something that happens. The butterfly getting out of the chrysalis, for example. Why aren't we grateful for it all, for everyone's effort, you see? Because, yeah, everyone's effort is yours. If you're not getting anybody any credit for their effort, I can guarantee you you're not getting any yourself from you. Okay. Being born into deeper consciousness, opening to deeper consciousness, because it's not something like you're just born in it, is very much like childbirth, I think. You know, the mother looks back and goes, wow, you know, it was tough, but, oh, you know, so satisfying. I'm so grateful. And I think that consciousness is the same way. I think the people that are in the deeper realms of consciousness and playing in the fields of their excellence, I think very much say, wow, look at all the struggle I did. And they have more compassion for everybody because they used to struggle just like that. You see? Okay. We have to have an intention. You know, that really helps when somebody comes in and has an intention. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to be more conscious. I want to have a better life. I want to do this well. Sometimes they come in and say, I want to do what you do, and I'm delighted. It's what my classes are for. Okay. And we can also do something about it when you're not willing to grow. Now, here's the thing. You can't come in not willing to grow. Okay? The husband that drags his wife in, you can see immediately in a couples counseling session that he really is trying to save the marriage, and she is already out of there and doesn't want to. She wants to blame him for everything, right? Not going to work. Absolutely will not work. So it's helpful for you to come in and want to do that, but it's also natural that at one point in your process, you stop and you're unwilling. You may have a better life than you've ever had. And that's when some people step away. They don't want it all. I've been one of these people that always wanted it all, but everybody can stop and start where they need to, right? Any really great therapist will drop the agenda and work on your unwillingness to move, work on your unwillingness to grow, work on your being stuck for whatever reasons. In my business, I often tell people when they are fighting me in some way that doesn't scare me a bit. I will fight you for you. And just about every client, I have to do that at some point. And as soon as I say that, they go, oh, yeah, I'm the one working against me. It's like, thank you. You know, it can take any form. It can be an out-and-out argument. It can, and you know, if you are the ego child's mind, that's your script, and somebody else is arguing you from the highest self, there's no chance. So why expend the energy that way? It's nice, though. I find that clients that do this work all know what they're doing at one point, and no excuse will do, and they don't fool themselves, and we get past it, and we go on. People can use drama that way, too. There's a histrionic personality disorder. It's a very interesting disorder. It's highly dramatic, and sometimes these people scare the people around them to death, you know, their spouses, their children, but they don't feel anything. They're just pretending to feel everything. That's a very shallow thing that they're doing because they're afraid. Okay. The nice thing about consciousness work is it gives you a larger perspective on all of your life, on your patterns. You begin to know what they are, and that's really important. We'll see some of them from the very start, but you're going to have more that are core. And when you get further along, it takes a little more time to root out the core patterns, the core issues. If you want to know how we do this here, I think I mentioned this last week, but I'm going to put it on the table again. There is a format that I've created, far from it being a stagnant piece of work. It is a format that takes you around the body and where things are stored. So as I would be doing some private work with you, I might feel a twinge in my heart, and that could be a number of things. It'll give me the thing that I am supposed to work on, like unrequited love for, but I've got to pick up the rest. And you can tell me the rest if you know it. But we very much get somewhere with this format. And it is following mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually you all the way down, that we may address all the bodies. One of the things I want to say is that you must not, and this could be another point in this program, I'm looking at my time, I have 10 minutes, you must not neglect your physical health or any of your health, your mental, emotional, physical health, or spiritual health. We have 4 bodies, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, that we work with here. I have often found that, you know, I'll be working along and I'll come smack dab out of something, and all of a sudden the person isn't moving as fast as they usually do. When you've done this as long as I have, you know who's moving fast, who's not moving fast, who's absolutely stopping. You feel it, right? And what is real important at this point is to say, you know, I think there may be some physical involvement. Why don't you go to a doctor? And I have certainly some doctors that are very compatible with this work. Let's find out what's really going on here so we can open it up. And I work with a person that is just marvelous, who I've sent several clients to, and I open up what she needs to see, and she opens up what I need to see. So our work is even deeper and better. It's a marvelous thing. Guys, I am going to stop right there, and we will go into all this one more time. We have only 9 minutes left. So I'd like to say, and I do need to make this announcement, that I will not be on the radio next week. Now, here's what I'd like you to do. I will be the following week, though, and we'll finish this then, 2 weeks from now. One of the things I very much want to put on the table for you is when I do take a week off, and I take a week off just once in a while, but, it's to finish writing my book or something like that. That's what this one is about. I very much need for you to go back and listen to these archived shows. We have, I don't know how many, I've never counted them. I would think there are 75 or 100 of them out there, maybe more. They're on all sorts of different subjects. They're on creating the life you want. They're on your physical health. They're on aging. They're on being ill. They're on, manifesting your dreams. They're on fantasy. They're on creating love and how to have a good marriage and partnership. So when I step away, I'm always hoping that you will dive into the archives, which is on Facebook Live, and it's also on Blog Talk Radio, and it's also going to YouTube every week. If you all will listen to those things, it will really help you, all right? I also want to say that we've got these books. There are 2 books out there. One is called The Life You Want. I've already addressed what was in that book. The other one is, if you're new to consciousness, is a very good book called The Teacup Prophecies. These are quotes that are from my radio shows, the magazine articles that I've written, my lectures, my classes, and much more. So that's a very, very good thing for you to pick up and just go like this too, once in a while, right? Ask a question, open the book, contemplate the answer. That book is also very successful and very popular on an app. We have created an app for iPhones. I'm hoping that in the next few months we'll have one for Droids. My IT person, who's just wonderful, Jam, says that the Droid platform is much harder to create than the iPhone was. So he is hard at work on that. But if you are lucky enough to have an iPhone in this instance, and I don't, by the way, I can't even get my own app, please, the app is $1. It's the whole book, the Teacup Prophecies. Go to the App Store on Apple, enter the Teacup Prophecies or Martha Novak, and you can buy it for $1. It also will send you, and this is not a general thing that they send out. I insisted that this be your own specific message for the day, and you'll get that in your email every day. So I hope you enjoy that. We think it's wonderful. You know, my husband, who is not one for anything metaphysical, he's so fun. I was trying it out with him one night, and he had sat too long in front of the television watching a show he didn't care about. He should have gone to bed, right? And he was exhausted. You could just see it in his face. And I said, well, here, he started complaining about it. I handed him the book. It was just in draft form. And I said, let's see what Spirit says about this. And he opened it up to, when is over, when is enough, enough. He's been a big believer ever since. Very funny. So enjoy it. And I hope that you get a lot out of it. It's a very nice, easy way, in my opinion, to absolutely absorb the information from the ascended mind. They're just in little bites, but we hope that you won't just read them and go, but that you will actually take them to heart and see what that is, what it says about you in that quote. Okay? Guys, I am very pleased to always talk with you each week. As I said, next week I won't be here. I will be here, but I won't be doing anything but sitting at the computer. So I'll be back on the 19th. That's when we'll get together again, okay? And we'll finish this then about the authentic life. Thank you so much for everything you do for this show and for me. I appreciate your referring clients. I certainly appreciate your doing what you do in the way of getting the word out about us. I get a little notice about who sent out what, and that means so much to me when you send this show out. I think on Blog Talk Radio you can have a section where you can send it out to your whole what do you call them? All your friends, right? But thank you for certainly befriending us and sharing and following and liking us. It means the world. It really does. And we certainly are trying to get the word out about this show and what we do here. Well, God, thank you so much for our being together today under the banner of knowing what love really is. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank all of you. We are so appreciative for of our listeners, and we open our hearts and minds and beings to your grace, dear God, as you come through us now and go out into the world with us as who we really are in our authentic selves. We thank you so much for all of this. We release what we can today of what we've heard, deliberately and consciously trying to make decisions a different way and be sensitive to the people we love and to our environment and to the people that are strangers, but really not. We thank you so much for everything. And we say this prayer now in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening to this show. Thank you. And so it is. Amen. Guys, thank you so much again for everything. You have a wonderful January, a wonderful new year. We'll see you on the 19th and finish our talk, okay? Bye-bye.